From Imola, hello and welcome on Eurosport from John Watson and Allard Cal. You're watching the morning warm-up for this afternoon San Marino Grand Prix, the third round of the FIA Formula One World Championship. The session started a minute and a half ago, all the cars out on the circuit, and probably most of the cars will come back in, apart from Okio Katayama, who stopped on the green bit already. And John, the atmosphere in the paddock this morning, more relaxed than yesterday afternoon.
Yes, indeed, and the tragedy that occurred during Saturday's qualification when Roland Ratzenberger lost control of his car at the end of the straight and hit the concrete barrier, and obviously a very bad accident from our point of view here in the commentary booth, and people in the pits waited a long time to hear news of Roland, and then finally in the middle of the afternoon news reached us that in fact he had died. So that cast a very dark cloud over not just Imola, San Marino, but in fact Grand Prix racing. It's been many, many years indeed since there's been a fatality at a Grand Prix, and it really did, I think, shock and sadden the entire world of motor racing. And well, this morning the atmosphere, as we've said, is a little bit more upbeat and a little bit lighter. There is a Grand Prix going to take place in about 4.5 hours time, and we're now into that final session in which everybody has a chance to decide what are they going to do. And as this is going to be a race of multiple pit stops, again the word strategy is one that is going to be used throughout this morning and all the way up until 2 o'clock when the San Marino Grand Prix will commence.
If we go back to Estoril last year, it was Michael Schumacher who won the Grand Prix in a Ford engine car. Then we went to Japan, Australia, and the first two Grand Prix of this year, all won by that V8 engine. The HB engine, the last Grand Prix of last year, and of course a new Z-Tech R engine, built and developed by Cosworth, has won the first two Grand Prix of this year, and it's a championship leader, while we watch Gerhard Berger in the pits. So this morning with us, Steve Parker from Ford. Steve, you must be delighted with the results so far this year.
Absolutely delighted, Allard. The engine's been going completely to expectations. We're very thrilled with it. We've still got more power to come out of it, and we're delighted with it so far.
Now it's a V8 engine, and in Brazil we got a sheet from Ford which said, well, it's doing 14,500 revs, the power output is this, etc., etc. Now that's fairly unusual for an engine manufacturer to say that sort of thing. Why is that?
Well, there is a lot of secrecy, necessary secrecy about these engines, because clearly we're out there to win. We don't want to give too many hints to the opposition. But at the same time, there is information which we know that people are interested in and which we like to pass on, and that's exactly what we did in Brazil.
Are we expecting more of that this year?
Well, we're going to try and find you some more facts to talk about. And as and when we get increases in power from the engine, then you'll find us crowing about it or talking about it, certainly.
Running with Ayrton Senna, who will start this afternoon on his 65th pole position of his racing career. Alongside him, Michael Schumacher, only 0.3 of a second behind. Well, this being regarded a power circuit, then you must be very happy with the performance of this engine here at Imola, Steve.
Yes, we are very pleased. We're just a little bit behind Senna at the moment. I think that one would have to say the two cars, the two drivers, the two engines would appear to be very evenly matched, and we're looking forward to a first-class race.
While we are watching Michael Schumacher, John, the word from Goodyear is that on wear, drivers only have to do one pit stop, so all the pit stops we'll see this afternoon will probably be performance related.
Yes, indeed, and everybody, I think, has done the calculation, and from what I've been able to find out this morning, the quickest way to run this Grand Prix is in fact to make 3 stops. Now, it isn't a wear factor that the extra stops are required for. It is purely on what is the shortest time that you can complete 61 laps of this Imola Grand Prix circuit. So 3 pit stops would appear to me to be the way that Benetton may go, the way that Williams may go. Of course, the one kicker in the whole situation is that Senna's on pole position, and he will, as we didn't do in Japan, he will try and take full advantage of that. And with the length of straight here at Imola, it's a long run from the start line down into the Tossa hairpin bend. If he can maintain that pole position into that Tossa hairpin bend, then he can dictate the pace that he wants to run at. And if he can do that up to the first pit stop, then the Williams team, for example, may decide to alter their strategy. The first stop strategy will be predetermined because they will have to run to the number of laps they've got the fuel capacity to do. But beyond that, they can then decide to go more or less. And it's really what happens this morning that will make that final decision prior to the Grand Prix. Very critical time indeed, and it's worth watching very closely indeed the lap times of both the Benettons and the two Williams.
John, we have Gerhard Berger currently the fastest. Now, if we look at yesterday's top speed, I mean, the Ferraris were much, much quicker than anybody else down the straight. Would that be a threat to Ayrton Senna, I would think?
Well, they ran, in the case of Berger, certainly the new Ferrari, the 043, that was the number that they have given this engine. And again, paddock chat indicates that they're getting over 800 horsepower from the new V12 Ferrari engine. Also, they've got this latest brew from Agip, which is available not just to Ferrari, but in fact to a Ford user, to Minardi, who use Ford HP engines. And Michele Alboreto was saying that he thought that fuel was worth an additional 10 horsepower to his Ford engine. So fuel's still a major factor in horsepower on a horsepower circuit.
Watching Mika Häkkinen. Mika qualified in 8th position on the grid with the new Peugeot V10 engine in the back of his McLaren. And teammate Martin Brundle qualified in 13th position, but then Mika on a 23.1 and Brundle on a 23.8. So that's 7 tenths between Häkkinen and Brundle in qualifying. Well, John, Senna and Schumacher, of course, the favourites, but could there be a joker in the pack in the form of, for instance, JJ Leto?
Well, for JJ, first Grand Prix of the year, and I think he's done a tremendous job coming in at the front end at a very competitive situation, and I think the team are very happy to see him starting on the third row. He's directly behind Gerhard Berger, which could or could not be a bad thing, dependent on your point of view. But if Ferrari feel they can't win the race, what they certainly, in my view, tend to do is try to lead as much of it in the early laps as possible. And if they then have to stop, at least they can say, well, we have made progress because we did lead or we ran at the front. So if JJ can slide along behind Berger, he could draw himself up very handily in that run down into Tossa.
10 minutes into the morning warm-up. Damon Hill currently fastest on the circuit. A 1:24.777. Then Gianni Morbidelli, Mika Häkkinen, Mark Blundell, Andrea De Cesaris, Olivier Beretta, Martin Brundle, Gerhard Berger, Heinz Harald Frentzen and Oliver Panis. That's the top 10. And if we, for instance, have a look at, Ayrton Senna now goes top of the list, but at a team like Footwork, Gianni Morbidelli, very quick here. And looking to my left, Steve, you're obviously very happy with the performance of the Benetton, but there are quite a few teams out there running last year's engine, the Ford HB engine, and they are doing very well as well.
Yeah, so one has to remember the HB engine won 6 Grand Prix last year. It's still a very competitive package. It has the advantage of being light and compact. It's very reliable, and I think we're going to see some very good results from the Ford-powered teams this year.
Senna 24.330. Hill 1/10 of a second behind that. John, one of the problems teams might encounter here this afternoon is it's nice and cool now, and it'll be very hot this afternoon looking at the sky.
Well, if you judge by Saturday qualifying, at the very warm indeed, up in the high 20s. So Well, it's not a major problem in terms of the car reliability, but it is, again, just putting the tyre situation very much into focus. And we've seen how much the circuit can change, how much it is affected by changes in temperature. And it is that the change or drop-off in the performance of the tyre, in other words, the tyre reaches an optimum lap time, and beyond that, then you're in a countdown. You've got to then decide what is the right decision to take as to when to stop for a fresh set of tyres to minimize the time lost on the circuit. But just let me going back to talking about reliability. One of the factors that's been notable in recent years is that there's a major increase in engine reliability. Well, again, we're just saying almost identical situation when we watched in qualifying on Saturday afternoon, Gerhard Berger taking the shortcut down at the chicane at the Acqua Minerale.
But Senna is the quickest driver, Damon Hill second, Morbidelli and Häkkinen. That's the top four. We're going to take a commercial break here on Eurosport, and then we'll be back with the remainder of the morning warm-up from Imola.
Serves you on the road. Eagles from Goodyear. A change for the better. For sport, live.
Currently sixth fastest, Michael Schumacher on a 1:24.978. Welcome back to Imola. And this was a couple of moments ago. On the left, we see Ligier locking up. And that's not the way you want to treat your new set of tyres, John.
Not at all. And the danger, that was Eric Bernard, the danger is that you flat spot a tyre, and that means that front set is going to be put to the back of your option tyre choice. But just going back to the question I was about to ask Steve Parker before the commercial break, why is it that the reliability of Grand Prix engines appears to have improved dramatically in the last 2 or 3 years?
I think there are probably a number of reasons, John. Part of it is materials technology. As we discover more about various different materials, we're able to build those into the engines to give us enhanced durability. And certainly there's an enormous amount of testing going on. Building racing engines is a very cold, clinical affair. You have to take your time to build them carefully. There's no point in taking any risks with the engines. You've got to make sure that the development process is thoroughly planned out and put an enormous amount of testing in it to give you that reliability that, of course, is so important.
Of course, the one factor that's not a consistent one is giving it to a race driver, because as soon as you take the engine from the workshop, put it into the chassis, then it is in the hands of the driver, and it is exposed to all the failings that you miss gear changes, or particularly on the downshift, when a driver sometimes goes through the downshift too quickly and you get over revs. So that always seems to be ultimately the weakest link now in the chain.
Well, that's true, although one has to say that a lot of the electronics we have on the car in terms of the automatic gear shifting, the engine management systems, can protect engines and transmissions from misuse. But that's really why, John, we carry out a lot of circuit testing. It's a very easy thing to test an engine on a bench, to test it with a dynamometer, but it doesn't give it exactly the same test that running it around the circuit does.
Well, this weekend, Gerhard Berger certainly given his Ferrari engine a fairly good workout, and Ferrari brought a very strong engine indeed for him. In fact, during Saturday qualifying, at the end of the straight, Berger was quickest at 335 kilometers per hour, and at that time he had a wing on the car that was massive. So indication of what Ferrari have been working at to try and get their competitiveness back to the standard which, well, they should have been at quite a long time ago.
Senna currently the only driver in the 123, so 123.2. Then the man you're watching, Damon Hill, the time, bottom right of your screen. And it would be nice to have a clock running on Damon to see how close he can get or whether he can beat that 123.227. That's currently the fastest time of the morning warm-up.
Well, it may be, Allard, that what Williams have done is try both strategy. Senna may have the option for the 3-stop race. Damon Hill may be looking again at doing a 2-stop race. In that case, he would be carrying a considerable amount more fuel than Senna would have done. That would, of course, again account for some of the difference in lap time. But it's at the end of this lap we'll know whether that is the case. If Damon is into the 23s, well, then we'll have to assume that both are doing a fairly similar thing.
Damon Hill completing his 8th lap of the morning at 23.931, 0.7 away from Senna. Then it's still Gianni Morbidelli, who is a second of Damon Hill's time. Then Mika Hakkinen, Gerhard Berger, Michael Schumacher is in 6th. Then it's Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Nicola Larini, Christian Fittipaldi in 9th. So both the footworks in the top 10. And Mark Blundell is 10th. Well, there we see David Brabham, and Brabham, the remaining Simsek, currently in 21st position, and I must say that's a very brave man. And John, I also think it's a good decision from the team to go out and race that car this afternoon here in Imola.
I think the only thing I will say, it is the correct decision.
Brabham, who finished 12th on his debut with the Simtek team in Brazil, retired very early on in Ida, but here, well, who knows what can happen. He qualifies in 24th position, and at one of the morning sessions he was actually 20th, and that is what he currently is on his 4th lap this morning. David Brabham on a 29.359.
Well, this is a race that Williams are very anxious indeed, not just to win, but for Senna to score points in. His principal challenger in the championship, Michael Schumacher, got maximum scores in Brazil, and that's not necessarily the best way to treat your tyres, particularly in this type of session. But Senna very anxious indeed to open his score in the 94 championship. And Imola really is the circuit where the pendulum of favour must go in his favour, principally because this is an out-and-out power circuit. But that is the kind of thing that we've been seeing a lot of in 94, what I would describe as unpredictability in car handling. The car feels like it's got grip. You turn in, you want to get on the throttle a little bit earlier, and all of a sudden the car breaks away, and it is almost impossible in situations these days to regain control.
Including that little slide, he's still with a 23.3, but the current fastest time still that 23.227. Damon Hill, 23.931. Then it's Morbidelli and Hakkinen very close together. Gerhard Berger is in 5th, and Michael Schumacher still 6th. So that is the situation with just under 10 minutes to go in the morning warm-up here in Imola. 7th through to 12th is on your screen at the moment, and 13th through to 18th right now, with Michele Alboreto in 18th position. There we see the remaining people that have been out this morning, 19th to 23rd, with Pedro Lamy, Eric Bernard, just completed 1 lap. So we're going to take a short commercial break, and then we're back with the last couple of laps here on Eurosport.
Sport live.
Welcome back here from Imola for the last 5 minutes of the morning warm-up for the San Marino Grand Prix this afternoon. Ayrton Senna has lowered fastest lap to 1:23.113, and Damon Hill just gone out on the circuit again, maybe to try and beat that, or he will definitely try and beat that, but whether he will, we'll see. Gerhard Berger is third, Christian Fittipaldi and Gianni Morbidelli fourth and fifth. Then it's J.J. Leto, Mark Blundell, Mika Häkkinen, Michael Schumacher and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, while David Brabham in the Simtek is now in 17th position. So we're watching the Ferraris of Nicola Larini and Gerhard Berger going down the straight, running together, and Larini is only in 11th position. This, by the way, is Gerhard Berger.
And Larini looking very twitchy and nervous under braking coming into Tosa hairpin. But for the Grand Prix itself, Berger on the second row of the grid, Larini directly behind him on the third row of the grid. So Ferraris, and again Larini looks sliding as he comes, Berger I should say, sliding the tail of his car through in the chicane at Acqua Minerale.
Christian Fittipaldi at the very happy footwork team, and that's one of the teams that's running one of those HB engines. I don't know whether it's a Series 8 or a Series 7, to be honest, John. What's it, Steve?
It's certainly an air valve engine. The choice is down to them.
Well, on a power circuit like Imola, I suspect if they got the 8 Series version of the HB, they'll use it because it does have more top end, and even with the new Ford Zetec R, there have been modifications introduced at Imola to enhance its top end performance, and one of the things that was very critical really in ensuring that they get the maximum performance from that was getting your gear ratios right.
Looks very much like a McLaren going straight on at the Acqua Minerale chicane.
And it looks very like Martin Brundle as well. And again, another little factor we're seeing increasingly in 94, that any little errors or any misjudgments are being quite severely punished. It's not just a question of locking up a wheel and slithering through. It means you've got to either take the shortcut or it's involving a spin.
So Larini moved into second on a 1:23.795, which puts Damon Hill back into third. Then it's Berger, Fittipaldi, Wendlinger, and the rest we won't see. There's the replay of Martin Brundle going straight on at that chicane, and that's the second time he's done it, although at a different chicane.
Well, I think it's going to be a part of the circuit during the race. We'll see quite a lot of people doing the same thing, and of course then the concern will be if there's company around, that when the car rejoins the circuit we don't have contact. It has happened previously. Well, there's the man really that we haven't spoken too much about so far this morning, Michael Schumacher, and part of the reason is he spent a lot of time in the pits. Currently only 11th quickest, 1:24.978, and that's a long way away from Senna, 1.8 seconds in fact. Now, Steve, obviously you don't know what the problems may be, but any indication as to why Schumacher would be much further back in this 30-minute session than we would expect him to be?
No, not really. I know that when the team packed up last night, they were very satisfied with the performance of both cars, so there were no issues last night, so I can only imagine it's something that's occurred this morning.
Well, we have to see Schumacher now coming up 3/4 of the way around the circuit, exiting out of Rivazza, down and through the chicane on Friday afternoon that saw Rubens Barrichello lose control of his Jordan, and a very big accident indeed. But Rubens turned up here on Saturday afternoon fit and well, and in fact came in and joined the Eurosport commentary team, and he's looking to return back to England sometime later this afternoon.
Michael Schumacher, the telemetry on our screen, the accelerator, the revs, the gears and the speed, and then we see the immense acceleration this car has. Well, with Steve, in all honesty, with Schumacher, JJ Leto and Benetton test driver Jos Verstappen, you've got a very good driver team at Benetton.
Yes, I think we're delighted to see that JJ has come back with a vengeance. He's certainly very, very happy with the way the car was going yesterday, and he doesn't seem to have any concerns about his own personal fitness, so we're absolutely delighted to see him.
Well, yep, John pointing it out. Ayrton Senna into the 122, so 122.707, and Damon Hill still second, or again second I should say, on the 123.449. Larini and Berger, the two Ferraris, then the two Footworks, then it's Wendlinger and Leto, Blundell, Häkkinen, Schumacher and Frentzen. But then Michael Schumacher crossing the line, and that's the 125.176 on that lap. Well, he might just run a lot of fuel, John.
I mean, obviously there's many things that could account or will account for the time that Schumacher's recording, and they can be doing, as you point out, they could fill the car half full of fuel to try and lull or kid the opposition into thinking that they have a problem, and again strategy and gamesmanship coming more and more into play. But just interestingly, Senna's fastest lap so far this morning is quick enough to put him into 5th place on the grid for the Grand Prix, and this is a car running in its Grand Prix trim there. Now the flag out to bring the session to an end.
And Senna's last lap, is it going to be any quicker than his previous? Yes, it is. A 22.597 for Ayrton Senna on his final lap of the morning warm-up. Now let's just wait for all the drivers to cross start finish and see whether this is the final top of the leaderboard. Can Michael Schumacher go any quicker? Can Damon Hill go a little bit quicker? And well, John, yes, so that's interesting. It's the two HB engine cars currently quicker than the ZTAC engine cars.
Well, I'm sure Steve has got an answer that he wouldn't want to give us, but I think that a very fine performance from the two Footwork Ford pilots. Fittipaldi 6th, Gianni Morbidelli in 7th, JJ Leto 8th, Michael Schumacher 11th. I'm quite sure that Flavio Briatore, who is the boss at the Benetton team, and Tom Walkinshaw, the technical director, know very well indeed what they have to do when it really matters. Though it's always comforting to know that when you go out in that morning session that you are fast, it gives the driver, the team, a nice warm feeling. Well, we'll know in about 4 hours when this San Marino Grand Prix commences whether there's any credence to be taken from what we've seen this morning, or is it just really a bit of window dressing?
Well, here we see positions 14 through to 24th, with Martin Brundle in 14th and Lamy in 24th. And don't forget, it's 4 hours until the Grand Prix starts, but it's 3.5 hours until Eurosport is back on air. We'll be on the grid talking to a lot of drivers and maybe other interesting people we can find out there. So from now, it's bye-bye from John Watson, Steve Parker and Allard Kauf. Thank you for watching the morning warm-up from Imola. We'll be back in 3.5 hours. See you then. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. See you later.
The Formula One World Championship is brought to you on Eurosport by Ford, Formula One's most successful team. Hitachi. Elf Fuel, World Champion. And Goodyear.
following the accident, the FIA called an emergency meeting in Paris yesterday, Wednesday, at which President of the FIA, Max Mosley, tried to give